India's historic home series loss against New Zealand is an eye-opener to the fact that our batting order has been struggling. However, what has seemed like a problem for just a couple of years actually is something that has been going on from 2020. Even despite all of this, India still continued their amazing home streak until New Zealand ended it. So then, what is it that really contributed to India still winning these matches at home despite the batting order not doing as well? Now, before we get into this video to break down India's incredible home streak and why they eventually lost, hit that subscribe button. Now, the first and foremost thing is the fact that the forms of Pujara, Rahane as well as Kohli started dipping from 2020. We've also made videos on this, so definitely go check it out. But the fact of the matter is that the batting stalwarts of India all went out of form at the same time, and this meant that the lower order had to do a lot of heavy weightlifting. And so, keeping the year 2020 in mind, we've divided the statistics into two parts. First part is from 2016 to 2019 and the other part is from 2020 to present. In this, we look at either cycle, the first cycle being 2016 to 2019 and the second cycle being 2020 to present, to see what is it that really has changed, how the lower order has contributed, and how things have changed over these two courses. Now, for this study, I'm going to be considering India's lower order, which is the numbers 7, 8 and 9. This is where a lot of runs have come, and we've seen the likes of Aswin, Jadeja, Akshar Patel and even Riddhiman Saha make amazing contributions at these positions. And the first thing that really stands out is that in the period of 2016 to 2019, the lower order contributed to 14.48% of India's runs scored at home. Whereas when we come to 2020 to the present cycle, India's lower order has contributed 22.69%, which is a whopping increase in 8.21% of the total team's runs scored at home. And now we also ran this comparison for countries who've done well, which is New Zealand and Australia. We looked at how their lower order has fared in India itself, and in the current cycle, which is 2020 to present, the Australian lower order has only contributed 10.17% of the total team's runs scored in India, whereas for New Zealand that number goes up to 17.9%. You'll also of course remember this from the India-New Zealand test series itself, where Mitchell Santner came and scored those runs in the lower order. And this is something I also want to come back to later on because it makes for a very interesting insight on why India eventually lost that India-New Zealand home series. And another very interesting insight that we get from the numbers that you can see is the fact that India have played more innings in the 2020 to present cycle despite playing lesser test matches. This means that the lower order has come out to bat more often in this era than in the 2016 to 2019 era. And what better way to look at this than to revisit some of the iconic matches that have happened and how the lower order has come and rescued India in these cases. Now, of course, the first thing I'm going to look at is the period from 2016 to 2019 where the lower order have come in and saved the test match in a couple of occasions. Now, the first case is the India-England home series in 2016-17. Now, while it was a run fest, there was a situation where India found itself in a bit of a pickle. India were 118 for 5 and it was the final day of play. India had about 20 to 25 overs to play, and this is where Aswin and Jadeja both walked in and contributed 32 runs each, and Virat Kohli remained not out on the other end. This is something that eventually helped India to go on and save that test match. And the second such instance is the 2016-17 Border Gavaskar Trophy match at home where India were trailing by 84 and at the time they were 216 for 5. This is where Ravindra Jadeja and Riddhiman Saha came in to add 96 runs, which eventually helped India save and go on to win that test match. Now, as compared to 2016 to 2019, in the current cycle there have already been 4 scenarios where India was trailing and the lower order has come and saved the test match for India. Now, out of these 4 instances, I'm going to be talking about 3 cases where the lower order has come and saved India and eventually they've gone on to win these test matches. Now, yet again, the first case is India versus England. This is 2020-21 home series. India were 146 for 6 and they were trailing by 59 runs at the time. That's when Washington Sundar walked in and got a 96 not out. Not only that, Akshar Patel too contributed 43 runs and eventually the tail wagged so hard that England went on to lose that test match. The second case came in 2022-23 Border Gavaskar Trophy at home where India were 135 for 6 and they were trailing by 128 runs. Here too, Akshar Patel came in and scored 74 and Ashwin scored 37, and these two again put in a big partnership and India went on to win this test match as well. And the last such instance is probably fresh in your memories is the India-England series in 2024 where India were 151 for 5 and they were trailing by 192 runs. This is where Dhruv Jurel walked in to score 90 and Kuldeep Yadav also got a valuable 28. In this case too, India went on to eventually close out that test match with a win. And these are only the cases that I've taken where India has gone on to win or draw the test match, where the lower order has come in and scored massive runs in the first innings and even scored runs in the case of some losses. And one such instance is obviously the India-Bangladesh first test at Chepauk where Ashwin and and Jadeja had that massive partnership to set up a big first inning score for India. And this brings me to the next part, which is the partnership data. If you look at the partnership for the 7th, 8th, and 9th wickets, we see some really interesting insights, especially when we put a comparison between 2016-19 and 2020 to present. Now, one thing that you'll see in both cases is that the 7th wicket partnership has always been very productive for India when it comes to test matches at home. And this is also because of the fact that generally Aswin or Jadeja have batted here, have been in good form, and if not them, it's been Riddhiman Saha who's come in and put in some amazing performances. But one thing that clearly stands out here is the massive improvement for the 8th and 9th wicket. Now, in the 2016 to 2019 cycle, the 8th and 9th wicket together would bat about 12 overs, whereas that number has gone up to 15 overs when it comes to the present cycle. And although it might be a small number when you think about it, it's just 3 overs, 18 balls, but that is good enough for the tail to stick with a top order batsman and get some handy runs. And especially the improvement for the 8th wicket partnership. Earlier they were getting a 50 plus stand every 6 innings, whereas now in the 2020 to present era, they're getting a 50 plus stand in every 4th innings that they come out to bat. And if you just look at the partnership data for each wicket, you'll see that there's a massive difference in the averages that have come for each wicket. And one thing to observe here is the clear deterioration of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th wicket partnerships, which were the top 3 in 2016 to 19, but when you move to the current era, they falter. This also perfectly coincides with the drop in forms of Virat, Pujara, as well as Rahane. And clearly you'll see that in the 2020 to present cycle, the 8th wicket partnership has become a big strength for India at home. And of course, this change in form could be attributed to a lot of factors. It's about India playing spin worse at home, or it could be about the pitches, it could be about the kind of situations we are put in, but that is a topic for another video. If that's something you want to see, definitely comment down below and we'll put that video out eventually. Till now it was fairly masked that India's top order was struggling a little bit. Of course, Pujara and Rahane have been dropped, Kohli isn't doing well, Gill too has now gone on to finally find his feet at that number 3 position. So there are a lot of issues in that batting order, and the loss to New Zealand at home just perfectly brings it all together. And this is also going to be the final part of this video, and that is the key point of difference I thought between New Zealand and India, and why New Zealand eventually went on to win the series. Now here's a look at the partnership data for the India-New Zealand series. Here you'll see that a clear picture is painted in the fact that India's 7th wicket partnership has performed the worst amongst both sides. Now this has been a very productive partnership wicket for us, and in this series they completely let us down. In 6 innings they scored all of just 49 runs for that particular wicket, which is the same as the 10th wicket partnership for New Zealand. And another astonishing fact and a big point of difference was that none of India's last 5 wickets contributed to a 50 plus partnership in any of the 3 test matches. And from here it's clear that we might have had issues with spin, but New Zealand clearly outbatted us. And not only that, they played more overs than us at our own home turf, and they also scored at a run rate much higher than us. And this is all there really is to it, right? We can obviously get into the nitty-gritties of how the spinners of New Zealand exploited us, but the fact of the matter is that the Indian lower order could not step up in this home series, an exception, and that eventually led to the top order being exposed and India eventually getting whitewashed in that home series. Of course, what's next is the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and the Indian lower order has actually done fairly well in the last couple of tours. They've contributed 23.5% of the total team's runs in 2018-19 and 19.82% of the total team's runs in 2020-21. For India to stand any chance to do well in the Border Gavaskar Trophy this time, they will have to ensure that the numbers 7, 8 and 9 can put in similar performances, replicate the past, and this is something that will also help tighten that batting order altogether itself. This has been our video on India's lower order and how their contributions have been so much more important than what meets the eye. If you like this video, definitely subscribe, share this with your friends, comment down below about what you think. All of our links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Peace.